And I used to pray and pray and pray as a little girl all the time, and it just didn't work. I was never safe. I never felt secure, and all the chaos going on never got any better. And so I just turned my back on God.
For so many of us, loving someone who struggles with addiction can feel like they are carrying a weight that never gets lighter. We love harder, try more, and do everything we can to hold it all together. And somewhere in the middle of all that, we lose ourselves. Today's guest, Mandy Jones, knows that story well. For years, she lived in the chaos of alcoholism and codependency, believing if she could just fix or help the people around her, everything would get better. But instead, she found herself empty and lost. It wasn't until she discovered Al-Anon, a recovery program for families and loved ones affected by alcoholism, that she realized that healing had nothing to do with changing anyone else and everything to do with surrender, boundaries, and finding her own higher power. Mandy is now the co creator and host of Monomyth Diaries, a podcast dedicated to transformation stories. Through her own journey, she discovered the beauty of self care, spiritual growth, and living a life that's finally her own. Mandy, welcome to Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, everyone listening. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on Positive Vibes, and I'm extremely grateful to share my experience, strength, and hope with your listeners.
Mm. And we're excited to have you too, Mandy, to share your story with us. So, just on that, can you share what your life was before you found Al Anon? What were you carrying and how did it affect you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I grew up in, as you said, active alcoholism. The strange thing is that I never had both of my parents drink at the same time. It's very
Mm,
strange. My dad was a heavy drinker. I call him an alcoholic. He did never call himself that, but that's what I would have called him. And he drank for a big chunk of my younger years. It
mm-hmm,
was very chaotic all the time, and unstable. You just never knew what was going to happen. There was a lot of abuse, physically, emotionally. And then, my mom eventually grew tired of that and asked him to leave. And so he did leave for another chunk of my early years. And
mm,
then my mom started drinking, which is
mm,
very strange.
mm,
And her drinking progressively got worse into my adolescent years, junior high, high school. And my dad actually comes back into the picture, and he's not drinking.
oh,
But he was very, very angry still because he quit
mm,
drinking, but really didn't solve any of his internal problems. So, I would have turned him a dry drunk. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of instability, chaos. The police would show up,
mm,
ambulance would come, just a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling. And even though when my mom wasn't drinking, she'd be throwing my dad's stuff out in the front yard. I mean, it was just a lot
mm,
of chaos.
yeah,
I carried all of that into my early adulthood, into my early relationships,
yeah.
just violent relationships very early on that were unhealthy. But, I didn't know better. That was all I knew. I thought that was normal. And I did eventually marry into that
Mm,
when I was in my early 20s.
yeah.
And, it really, really came to a head when I was married to my first husband. We're no longer married. And my mom passed away,
Mm,
and I'm kind of thrown back into my family of origin. At that time I had graduated from college and moved to Texas. They're from Ohio, which is the northern part of the United States. And so I go back to Ohio, and I'm thrown back into all the drinking, all the chaos of my original belly button family, as I call them, the people
mm,
that I was born to. And at that time, my ex-husband, who is still my husband, was acting out, is what I call it, just in
yeah.
very destructive ways. And I don't blame him at all for our tumultuous relationship. I was a sick person, bringing all that with me from my
Mm,
childhood and early years. He did as well. Like attracts alike. he was very unhealthy, I was very unhealthy, and here you have these two unhealthy people trying to make this relationship work. And
Mm.
he was just, as I call it, misbehaving.
Yeah.
Right at the same time that my mom died. And he would
Mm.
disappear and I wouldn't know where he was. And, not really sure what he was off doing. He was in his addiction as well. He's definitely an addict. And I had a really, really good friend at that time that I worked with. And she's about 20 years older than I was. And I had worked with her for 5 to 6 years. And her
Yeah.
name is Diane. And I do have permission to share her story.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was at my wit's end with everything that was happening in my life. Sad from my mom dying, sad from what's going on with my ex-husband. And I call her and just tell her everything. And her response to me was, did you know, or do you think alcoholism was your problem?
Mm.
And she proceeds then to tell me her story about how her husband was an alcoholic and her relationship with him was just like mine was at one
Mm.
point. And I couldn't believe it because I admired her so much and she and her husband had the best relationship. She just behaved with grace and dignity all the time. And I
Mm.
couldn't understand at that time that these two people could have been, as chaotic as my life felt. And I
Yeah.
just couldn't see it at that time. But, looking back, I'm so grateful that she was willing to share that testimony with me, to know
Mm.
that her life once was crazy and now it's peaceful and serene. And that will
Mm.
plant that little mustard seed in me that life can be different. It can look different. It's the first time I'm
Yeah.
seeing good, healthy relationships.
Mm.
So that's what my life was like prior to finding the Al-Anon program.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just crazy. And again, like I said, I was always looking for an external solution to my problems. I tried drugs, I tried alcohol,
Yeah.
and then I just jumped from bad relationship to bad relationship to bad relationship. I always needed to be with somebody to make me feel good, something
Yeah.
external to make me feel good. So I had a lot of
Yeah.
codependencies because of what I saw in my
Mm.
house.
Yeah. So you've talked about that drugs and alcohol, but you also thought if you just loved harder or kept the peace, things would change. So how did that blend into your life?
Oh man, yes. So I always felt like I needed to be perfect, growing up,
Mm.
trying to keep the peace at all cost inside of my house. Um, I would make sure I had good grades. All of the things
Yeah.
uh, that I needed to be safe. Um,
Mm.
I would avoid conflict, all of those, hypervigilance, all those things to keep peace. Um, Remind me the question.
So you talked about your alcoholism and drugs before, but
Hmm.
you've also said that if you just thought if you loved harder or kept the
Yeah.
peace that things would change. So how did that blend into your life? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the idea of control. I wanted
Mm.
control of my situation so that I could feel okay, and keep the peace at all cost.
Mm.
If I could just get the people around me to behave, as I said, my ex-husband was misbehaving. I really wanted him to be a certain way. I always looked to change people. And if
Mm.
I could get them to change, if I could get them to do what they needed to do, then I would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So with that, and again, I'm just going to touch on what you said before with your ex-husband and yourself, how you were attracted to each other, and light meets light, or energy meets energy. It's also was a part of your conditioning as you grew up. You grew up in a family that had alcoholism, so you were actually conditioned to that was quite normal as well. But going through what you've done and also trying to do love harder and trying to keep the peace, where was your breaking point when you realized something had to shift?
Mhm. My breaking point came about 6 months after my mom passed away. My
Mm.
ex-husband and I decided to try to salvage our relationship.
Mm.
And about six, as I said, about 6 months later, he acts up again, starts misbehaving, as I said, just the things that he was
Mm.
used to as well. And I called my friend, the same person, Diane, and I said, I can't live this way anymore. I will do whatever it takes. I want what you have. How do I do
Mm.
it? And she introduces me to Al-Anon.
Yeah.
And so I start going to Al-Anon that January. And in, so that was in January 2005. We proceed to stay married through this. He doesn't want to change with me. He's not willing to be different. So I'm growing and we're growing apart even more.
Mm.
I'm going on one path of growth and he is staying in destructive patterns.
Yeah.
And we have a child together,
Mm. That's tough.
which I'm so grateful that I have my son, but I now
Mm.
know looking back, I was trying to fix that situation by having a baby, and I wouldn't
Mm.
change it as I said, but I'm so grateful that I have him. But that is what I did. And then in December of 2006, after our son is born, I find out my husband's having an affair.
Mm.
And I had answered his telephone, and his girlfriend had called to wish him a Merry Christmas, as a matter of fact. And when I confronted him, he actually hit me. He struck
Mm.
me while I was holding our son. And that was the day that I knew I was
Mm.
done. And I was so grateful that, again, I'd had about a year and a half that I had been in Al-Anon in the recovery program and working the 12 steps with Diane, my friend, who became my sponsor, and
Mm.
learning to love myself, gain self-esteem, learn that I can't control other people, that I don't have to
Mm.
please and keep the peace anymore, that I can have healthy relationships and I have the support team of people around me. So
Yeah.
I wanted out of that relationship. I knew at that point I wanted out of that relationship, but I just didn't know how to get out. And that
Yeah.
day, I can tell you, is one of the best days of my life, that I found out
Mm.
he was having an affair, that he hit me, because it gave me that permission to go, I'm done.
Mm.
I want out of this, and I'm really going to move forward by myself
Mm.
as a single mother. And there was one point that Diane said to me, Mandy, you're not alone anymore. You've got a team of people around you. You
Yeah.
will never be alone. You will not raise this child alone. You have all these people. And so
Mm.
that day was definitely my turning point, that I'm going to really, really focus on doing things differently and live for myself.
Yeah.
I, was learning all of the things that I had buried. I had lost myself in all of the
Mm.
chaos and all the turmoil of trying to make everybody else around me happy so that I could feel okay. And
Yeah.
I learned through the last 20 years of being an Al-Anon that I can't do that. So that
Yeah.
was a big turning point for me.
Yeah. Mandy, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that probably resonate with your story and have had a similar experience themselves. And it's a very tough gig to be so young and to have a loved one and to actually put yourself through a program to help your relationship and to find that it actually ended in the end. But as you said, you're all grateful. So just on Al-Anon, for those that may know, what is it?
I love that you're asking me that question. I
Mm.
love to tell people about Al-Anon. Al-Anon is a support program for people whose lives have been affected by someone else's drinking.
Mm.
And we learn tools and strategies, we heal, we focus on personal growth. It's a program about ourselves, and we learn to have peace and serenity in our life again. And
Mm.
it's something that you do forever. It's not a program you graduate from. When I first got to Al-Anon, I was very angry that I had to be
Mm.
there. I felt like I was being punished for, the mistakes that my parents made because of my ex-husband. And I'll be honest, part of me when I first went to Al-Anon was to figure out how to get all these people to quit drinking and behave. If they would just do what I wanted, then everything would be okay.
Yeah.
That's originally why I went there. And I learned that that's not what it's about. I'm never going to find an external solution to my internal turmoil.
Mm.
That peace had to come from me working on me and figuring out who I am. I had lost my identity. I had I could tell you what everybody around me liked to do and what they were like, but I had no idea what I liked and
Mm.
who I was.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best gifts that we get from Al-Anon is learning who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do similar things. It's I call it the sister program of AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
We do all the same 12 steps, similar tools, similar ideas where we're really focusing on ourselves and our
Mm.
situations. So, and I think it's important to say that if you think about my family of origin for a moment, let's just assume it's just my dad who's the drinker. You
Mm-hmm.
have my mom, my sister, my brother, and myself. You've got four of us in one household orbiting my dad. So
Mm-hmm.
there are more people affected by that person's addiction than the actual addict.
Yeah.
So it's a program for anybody, a mom, a sister, a brother, a child. I mean, anybody, a friend. I mean, as long as somebody else's drinking is bothering you, it's a great place.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a fantastic program. So you mentioned that you've spent all your life trying to fix people and fix the problems. What was your reaction being told that healing wasn't about fixing others, it was about focusing inward?
I didn't understand that at all.
Mm,
Focusing on introspect was a brand new concept to me. Now,
mm,
remember, I was only 28-ish years old when I got into the Al Anon program, so it's 20 years later.
yeah.
And I couldn't understand for the first couple of years that it was about me. It took me a long time. It wasn't this big aha moment. It was whittling away little by little. They have a phrase in Al-Anon, it's keep coming back. It works if you work it. And
Mm,
I wanted what those people had. I wanted their peace, their serenity, their good relationships. And I was willing to keep coming back and listening until it just slowly absorbed that,
yeah.
okay, if they can do it, I can do it. Also working the 12 steps of Al-Anon, which again is the same as AA, really makes you focus on yourself and you start to see these patterns. Oh, I did play a part. I was a part of the problem.
Mm,
So there was this shift that happened where I was pointing the finger and angry at my parents and angry at my
yeah.
ex-husband to, oh, I did play a part in this. I do have a big part. I picked
Mm,
him.
yeah.
It wasn't all his fault. I was a
Mm,
very sick person too.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was a slow process of realizing that I had some accountability and getting
Yeah.
that awareness that I was going to have to work on myself. And I
Yeah.
could recognize these patterns through working with a sponsor, through working on the 12 steps that helped me
Mm,
realize that it was about me. I had to shift my focus to myself and to my
yeah.
own internal healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be tough for some people to do that, always look outward for the reason why and not inward. In what you said there, that, you picked your husband, where a lot of people in situations can enable the situation time and time again, but don't see that they're enabling it to happen. So it's a interesting for you to share that. And you said that it took some years. Was there a moment where you started to feel hope again?
I think I started to feel hope early in the beginning of program.
Mm,
And I think I call it borrowing miracles.
mm,
When you attend Al Anon meetings, we share what we call our experience, strength, and hope. That's what we do in meetings. And listening to other people share their miracles of growth and healed relationships, healed brokenness gave me a lot of hope
mm,
that I could have that too. And I'm so grateful for all of those people who share so openly and vulnerably their stories of transformation.
mm.
Yeah, it's really them that gave me that hope. And again, it's not a big aha moment. It's just slowly over time listening, building these miracles. that
Mm.
I too can have what they have, that they too were once broken like I was.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like it's a really nice place to hold space for each other and people feeling trusted and respected in that area as well. So, just on hope, you've also said surrendering to a higher power was part of your healing. What did that look like for you?
I love talking about this. When I
Mm,
first got into program, I really disliked going to meetings where people were talking about their higher power. You know, some
mm,
people call it God, Jesus, grace, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call your higher power. I really
mm,
disliked that because I was angry.
yeah.
I grew up with a lot of mixed messages, as I said. There was a picture of Jesus hanging in my house. My dad would read the Bible. We'd pray before dinner, but then we'd see the chaos. I mean, the mixed messages were kind of crazy. I grew
Mm,
up going to a Bible study once a week, but not really seeing any of the things I was learning put into practice inside my home.
yeah.
And I used to pray and pray and pray as a little girl all the time, and it just didn't work. You know, I was never safe. I never felt secure in all the chaos going on, never got any better. And so I just turned my back on God a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got into a program, my sponsor said I didn't have to believe in a higher power. It could be her. You know, she said, "Do you believe the program worked for me?" And I said, "I do." And she said, "Look, I'll be your higher power for now." Right? And
Mm,
so it from there it just grew
mm-hmm.
from being angry, really, is what it was. I was really angry at God,
Yeah.
for all of the nonsense that was going on in my life. And slowly over time, again, listening to people share about their higher power and that I didn't have to grow up with that same finger shaking God inside of my home.
Mm,
Because my parents were broken people too. They were doing the best I could. And why was I using their model as my model? I had to
yeah.
unlearn that. And so I was watching again people model what their higher power looked like. And
Mm,
and over time, I went, okay, I am really just angry at God, and
yeah.
I need to work on this. And slowly became to I came to form my own relationship with my own higher power, whom over the years I called different things. It was my sponsor for a while, then it
Mm,
became the wisdom of Al-Anon and the group. All of
yeah.
my support team became sort of my higher power until I could sort of establish that, yeah, I do think there's a God out there, and this my God has a sense of humor. He has
Mm,
all the same feelings that I have, and why not, right? And
mm,
over time, I became a Christian just recently in
yeah.
March of this past year. I dedicated my life to serving and to being saved, and yeah, my faith walk has taken a long time, and Al-Anon did that for me because it softened my heart to being
Mm,
open to new ideas and
yeah.
and and letting God back in. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, and being able to give my higher power that control back. I don't
Mm,
have to control people, places, things, situations. I can surrender all of that to him,
yeah.
and I don't have to take that on anymore. And how freeing is that? That
Yeah.
I only have to put the focus on myself and my relationship with my higher power, and everybody else is free to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful story that you worked through all those feelings through your recovery and your relationship has changed spiritually with God. Yeah. So that's a beautiful story. So, Mandy, what did learning to detach with love mean to you personally?
Detaching with love is one of my favorite tools in the program.
Yeah.
As I said, I was very angry in the beginning of being an Al-Anon. I was angry with my parents,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand how they could have children and treat them so terribly. It didn't make sense to me. But the disease of alcoholism just ruled their life.
Mm,
And I had to learn to separate, to detach my parents from alcoholism so that I could learn to love them.
mm,
So I can love my dad and hate the disease of alcoholism at the same
mm,
time. He
Yeah.
really was doing the best he could, and I can see that now. If I could separate and detach those two things, I could learn to love my dad again. I could learn to love my
Mm-hmm.
mom again. And as crazy as it sounds, love my ex-husband. I mean, he got me into Al-Anon and
Yeah.
gave me my son. He gave me so many blessings. I can have that love again. God tells us that we're supposed to love everybody.
Mhm.
There's a saying that we have in Al-Anon, you may not like all of us, but you'll love us in a very special way.
Yeah. I love that.
And I do love everybody in a very special way. So
Yeah.
that to me is being able to detach people
Yeah.
from, you know, their addiction.
Yeah, yeah. And again, just on addiction, it is an addiction. It's an addiction to a substance. And that's where people feel shame because they have an addiction. But, these things are made for people to become addicted to them. This is what the large companies do. And it has awful effects on families and our loved ones with that. So, it's something that people need to be aware of. It's not something to be shameful about, it's something to address and also to understand that it's not their fault. It's actually made to become an addiction. So, for someone who struggles with codependency, setting boundaries can feel really scary. How did you begin?
I Yes, in the beginning, as I told you, I didn't know who I was.
Hmm.
I remember working with my sponsor in the beginning. She said, I want you to make a list of 10 things you like to do. And I couldn't do it. I could not tell her 10 things I liked to do.
Mm.
And it was very eye-opening to me. I could tell you 10 things my ex-husband liked to do
Yeah.
or the people around me, but
Mm.
because I was so dependent on other people to make me feel better. And I had to really sit and be silent and learn to be alone. That was the other thing that my sponsor
Mm.
would have me do is I want you to take an hour, just be by yourself. Don't talk to anybody, just be in your own space. That was a
Yeah.
really hard thing to do because I was so used to being around people to make me feel better. And I had to also make a list of 10 things I wanted to learn to try. I just had to try them. I didn't have to like them.
Yeah.
I just had, because I was so afraid to try new things
Yeah.
for fear of not looking perfect,
Mm.
and I would try new things maybe with my partner or my friends, but not for myself. Uh,
Mm.
so codependency for me was learning to love myself also. I
Mm.
had no idea how to love myself. I had no self-esteem. I was so broken when I got there.
Yeah.
So I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet by myself, pay my own bills, like be completely by myself to break that cycle of needing someone else. Do I
Mm.
do it perfectly today? I can't honestly say that I do. A couple of years ago, I realized that I was still struggling with some fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hard cycle to break, especially as you
Mm.
said, those things are ingrained in you as a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? But having the tools to do introspect, to look at myself, to work on my own personal growth constantly helps me be aware
Mm.
that that cycle, that pattern is still, trying to invade my space.
Mm. Yeah. I was just listening to when you were saying that your sponsor said to go and sit by yourself, be by yourself. That can be one of the hardest things for people that like to people please and look after everyone is to sit in their own space and to do some soul searching. And I believe there's going to be so many listeners out there resonating to what you said in regards to you knew what everyone else liked, but you didn't know what you liked. You didn't know how to have fun anymore. You didn't know what made you, laugh. But you knew what made everyone else laugh in that space. So that can be a very, very tough place to get to, but it's one of the best places to get to if you can get there. So, what role has self-care played in rebuilding your identity?
self-care is something we just talked about the other day in one of my meetings.
Mm,
It's evolved in the last 20 years. When I
yeah.
first started looking at self-care, I never went to the dentist. I never bought
Mm,
new clothes. I mean, I just was a mess because I was so focused on everybody else.
yeah.
And I didn't know how to do that. And again, it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day that sponsors to me are sort of like life coaches today. We're
Yeah.
hearing that buzzword all the time, life
Yeah.
coaches, life coaches, life coaches. But in 12-step programs, we've had life coaches for decades, right?
Mm,
And so my sponsor, you can look at her as a life coach.
yeah.
And she would say things like, how about today you just go to the store and buy some undergarments that don't have holes in them? I
Mm,
mean, it was so simple. So self-care in the beginning was going just to get a pedicure,
yeah.
buying a piece of clothing for myself. And it
Mm,
has evolved over the years to I know now when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need to take an hour to just go be by myself.
mm,
And, make sure I make my doctor's appointments and focus on, my program. And today, self-care is making sure I still go to meetings, making sure I still read my literature, working with my sponsees now.
yeah.
I'm giving back the same way that they gave to me. And I get
Mm,
so much self-care by sitting with these women and helping them through their journeys.
mm,
Self-care is so important to me.
yeah.
I it's probably one of the most important parts of what I've learned over the years because if I don't take care of myself, I can't be a servant to anybody else. If I don't take
Yeah.
care of me, I can't help those other women or
Mm,
tell my stories and spread the message of Al-Anon. I can't do that if
mm-hmm.
I'm not taking care of myself. So today's self-care is a lot of focusing on myself
Yeah.
today and
Yeah.
staying out of other people's business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That resonates with me. Yeah. Again, looking after yourself, self-care, it makes you shine. And then if you're shining, others around you will shine too. But just picking up on what you said there, where you're helping others and that to be able to give back um, so selflessly is just an absolute space of gratitude. And it's a wonderful place to be in that acts of kindness to do that. Yeah, so it's wonderful what you do there. But I know what you do, you actually get back. You're receiving that back at the same time by helping others as well. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Giving back
yeah,
to the program is so important because if the people get healthy and leave the
yeah,
program, there's nobody to help the new people. It's a cycle. We
exactly.
have to help one another.
Yeah,
My God tells me that, I'm a servant. That's what I
yep.
do. I give for fun and for free, or I don't give it all.
Yeah, and that's the acts of kindness is, what happened to you, you'll give on to the next person, and the movement just happens over and over and again. Yeah. So how does life feel different now that you're living more for yourself and less through others?
My life is amazing.
Mm,
I tell people all the time, I feel like I have a Cinderella ending.
mm, that's
Today, I can
lovely.
tell you all the things I love to do. I love to ride my bike. I love to read. I love to spend time with my family. I, I love life. I
Yeah.
have a wonderful husband who is very, very supportive of me. Life is so different today.
Mm,
All my relationships are different. I know how to set boundaries. I know how to
mm,
love. I know how to give. Life is amazing, amazing, amazing. There's so
yeah.
many gifts and blessings that have come from the hard work, that
Mm,
I've put in. And I think that's important that people, when they go through these situations, share on the other side. They
mm,
give back because of their struggles and
yeah.
what they've learned. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's really coming back to the little things in life that make you happy, and how you share that with others. And also being open to receive and to give is another thing, that it just is, a beautiful place to be. So, Mandy, do you have a mantra or a phrase that that you return to when things are getting overwhelming?
I have a lot of mantras.
Mm, we all
If I
do. We
had
all
to
do.
pick, right, if I had to pick one, I would say it's let go and let God.
Mm,
That's probably my favorite one. If I'm really hyper focusing on a situation, then I'm not letting God do his job.
yeah.
I'm, raising a wonderful son. He's 19 now. No one told me that
Mm,
raising a a young adult is harder than raising young children. And learning to watch him do life and make bad decisions on his own is very difficult as a parent.
yes.
And I constantly have to say, let go, let God, let go, let God, and
Mm,
I'm terrible. I know I can surrender my son to God one day and the next day I take him back.
yeah.
I'm like, no, God, I think I can do it better, and then I have to let him go again. It's a
Mm,
constant struggle for me to stay in my own business. We call it
yeah.
staying in your hula hoop. You can only hula hoop with one person inside the hula hoop.
Yeah.
And I have that visualization of staying in my hula hoop and letting God do his job.
Yeah.
So yeah, let go and let God is probably my favorite mantra.
Yeah. It's having that complete trust that, yeah, he's got everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's his job. It's not my job.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have a daily practice that helps you stay centered?
Ooh, I do have some daily practices. I get up every morning and I pray and meditate.
Yeah.
And that is a relatively new thing. I started praying years ago, but meditating is a new one. And to me, praying is talking to God and meditating is listening.
Mm,
I do that one. I read my Al-Anon literature right after that. So I'm usually doing my prayer and meditation first thing, and then I move on to my Al-Anon literature. And then I listen
mm,
to some spiritual music every morning,
yeah.
just to get my day started in a
Mm,
positive way. And I feel like if I set my tone immediately to having an attitude of gratitude
mm-hmm.
every single morning, I live as a happier, healthier person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of those things were resonating with me, what you were saying there. So, Mandy, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your monomyth diaries or your journey on Al-Anon?
Yes, thank you for asking that. A couple years ago, started a podcast called The Monomyth Diaries, and it is a
Mm,
space for individuals to share their journey of growth as you're doing. By the way, I love what you're doing. I admire you
mm,
so much that you are giving people a platform and a safe space to do these sort of testimonials. So thank you very
mm,
much. I
no,
appreciate having this opportunity. But you can find us at monomythdiaries.com. And it is a series of all sorts of people going through transformations. And my
mm,
story is on there. I was the very first person to tell my story, trying to set the example of what that looks like. And so if you go back to season one, you can hear my story
mm.
and learn more about me. Yeah. So monomythdiaries.com.
And I think it's wonderful what you've done, Mandy, and what I get to do every day is absolute gratitude is actually listening to people's lived experiences, understanding what they went through and how they've healed themselves and how they're healing others. And I get to share that with everyone that listens and to connect people that have had similar journeys to that person that may be able to help them through their issues at the time. So yeah, complete gratitude for me, but yeah, I'm in awe of what you do as well. And if someone listening today feels stuck in the chaos of a loved one's addiction, what would you want them to hear today?
That I'm a miracle. Miracles
Mm,
can happen. I know it's scary to walk into an Al-Anon meeting full of people that you don't know, but there's so much wisdom inside of those rooms with those people sharing
mm,
their experience, strength, and hope. I truly believe I wouldn't be where I am today, a happy, healthy person, without Al-Anon, without a sponsor, without the tools and the practices that I've learned along the way.
Mm,
Just give it a try. What is there to lose?
mm,
This is the thing too. It's free. Going to Al-Anon, we say it costs you $1 a meeting. It's really up to you what you donate to the meeting. It
yeah,
doesn't cost anything. This is for fun and for free. We truly want to help one another. And
mm,
it's free. There's no reason not to give it a go.
yeah. Well, you certainly are evidence, Mandy. You know, the energy is just vibing off you, and yeah, it's radiating through the computer to me. So you are evidence of what the outcome of Al-Anon can do for you. Yeah, absolutely. So, Mandy, thank you. Thank you for your honesty and reminding us that healing doesn't come from fixing the people around us. It comes from turning inward, letting go, and choosing peace for ourselves. So, thank you, Mandy, for sharing your journey with such honesty and so much energy today.
Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate again the opportunity to share with you and the listeners the message of Al-Anon. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And to everyone listening, if you ever felt lost in the chaos of someone else's struggles, know this: you are not alone and your healing matters. There's freedom in surrender, strength in boundaries, and hope in choosing a life for your own life, for choosing to live your life again, your own way. So, this is Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis. Until next time, choosing peace, keep choosing faith, and keep choosing you. To everyone out there, sending you all love and positive vibes. Bye for now.